Hi everyone, this is Wayne Rivers at Performance Construction Advisors, where we build better contractors. This week I want to talk about a great book, Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Dr. Attia. My wife is sick of this book. I read it on the plane going to my peer group meeting in December, and I've been talking about it ever since. I've been talking about it with some of my friends, my tennis buddies, and it turns out they've read it. Maybe some of you have read it too, but it really is a great book. And Dr. Attia has a really popular podcast as well that you might check out. Anyway, he talks about the evolution of medicine 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. And he said that when he was an intern in, he was in Baltimore, I think at Johns Hopkins. And he said he was taught that death comes in two ways, fast and slow. And so in Baltimore, as a young resident, he would see the emergency room cases where there was trauma. And then he would also see cases in the hospital of people that had degenerative diseases and various things. We'll get to the big four, as he refers to them, in a minute. But death comes fast and slow. Medicine 1.0 conclusions were based on observations, and this goes back to Hippocrates and really up through about the late 1800s, believe it or not, when medical schools began to formalize. There were lots of medical schools in Europe and the USA, but unfortunately they weren't very rigorous. In fact, you didn't have to have any sort of education to get into medical school for the most part. They were more or less, they were for-profit organizations, so they were really, I might say, less than rigorous in some of their standards. There was no use of cadavers or anything like that. Medicine 2.0 used the scientific method, and germ theory came about. There was improved sanitation and plumbing, and then, of course, in the early 20th century, antibiotics were developed. And since about 1900, human lifespans, because of those things, have doubled. Now, Attia says that, sure, antibiotics have been good. All the other drugs that have been developed since the beginning of antibiotics, have they really added? So lifespans doubled, and that was recorded, let's say, around 1970 to 1980. Since then, lifespans have really not extended. In fact, in the USA, lifespans have shortened a little bit. And he says really a lot of the credit in lifespan extension has to do with improved sanitation and plumbing. As much as anything else. So that's an interesting viewpoint from a medical professional. And then medicine 3.0, he says, is going to be much more preventive. So right now medicine doesn't offer much. I'm even going to my own doctor, so no disrespect, doctor, but I don't want to have to come to see you every time it's a little problem. What can I do? Well, there's not much you can do. So not much devotion to prevention. And he talks about the four horsemen. What are the four horsemen? Heart disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disorders, and then diabetes, especially type 2. Those are the four horsemen. And medicine hasn't really developed solid ways of communicating to us, patients, how to prevent the onset of the four horsemen. Now, Attia has created a new word. In the book, The Science and Art of Longevity, he kind of eschews the word longevity in favor of a new word called health span. So lifespan, you know what that is. Health span is that not only do you live a long life, but you live a healthy life. So he talks about the decline of people usually lasting about 10 years. Pick your ages. Usually lasting about 10 years. What he says with health span is the goal is to not have that be 10 years. Maybe you have 1 year of decline because you're so healthy going into various ages or interfaces with the four horsemen that you last a little bit longer, and you're certainly healthier throughout. One of the real innovations that he talked about, one of my tennis buddies related to me, this was his big takeaway from the book, was the centenarian decathlon. Well, that sounds like, where's my gold medal, my gold, silver, and bronze? That's not what it's about. When people go into Attia's practice, he gives them a list of about 100 day-to-day activities. And for example, it could be something as easy as, or something as simple as grabbing your bag and putting it in an overhead compartment on an airplane. You want to be able to do that. You want to be able to pick up your children or great-grandchildren. You want to be able to carry a bag of groceries from the car up a flight of stairs, that kind of thing. So he has people go through and select the day-to-day activities they never want to be without, and then he devises specific training to help them. And the funny thing is, he says that you don't wait until you're near the end of your lifespan to begin these things. You start training for these things. For some people, he has them in their 30s and 40s already training to be able to complete their own centenarian decathlon. Really, really a fascinating book. Now, what are his preventive prescriptions for staving off the four horsemen? You're kind of not going to believe this. Number 1, exercise. Number 2, nutrition. Number 3, sleep. And number 4, emotional health. Now, why do I say you're not going to believe these things? When's the last time your doctor actually talked to you about any of those things? I'll get more exercise. How are you sleeping? Well, do something to sleep better. Here's a prescription. They're not taught. Well, when Attia was in medical school, they weren't taught at all. They may be now, but they weren't back then at all. And he says that it's really a glaring oversight. Nutrition, for example. I mean, that's the basic building block, isn't it? If you don't have good nutrition, you don't have good health, and then I mean, that makes life more complicated in 1,000 different ways. So number 1, exercise. He is an exercise fanatic, and he promotes exercise among all of his patients. With respect to nutrition, he talks about the modern diet and basically how unhealthy it is. And he counsels only buy things from the outside of the supermarket. The farther you go into the interior of the supermarket, there's more and more processed foods, and he doesn't like that. He says, in fact, that if you look at the ingredients label and you see things scientific names or chemical names that you don't recognize, you probably want to avoid those products. You want as much natural ingredients as you can possibly get. Sleep. Here we are, enterprising business people, and we're like, I work 80 hours a week. I only need about 4 hours of sleep. That's not good. And he has a really insightful question. If sleep is so unnecessary to human success, why hasn't evolution gotten rid of it? Even in the animal kingdom, every animal studied by scientists so far has some mechanism for sleep. Sleep has some restorative, we don't know what it does. We don't know how many good things it does yet because it hasn't been studied all that long. But if sleep wasn't necessary, you hardworking contractors out there, then why has evolution not gotten rid of it over the last few 100,000 years? And then finally, he talks about emotional health. And he's very candid as he relates the story of his own challenges with respect to family life and his emotional health. When we're suffering, it's rarely because of some direct cause, like a rock that's crushing our leg at that very moment. Much more often, it's because we're thinking about some painful event that occurred in the past, or worrying about something bad that may occur in the future. That source of pain is inside my own head. Now, that makes perfect sense. That's logical to all of us. We can all understand and empathize with that. But when it's you, or when it's Dr. Attia, a little harder. So he does have some prescriptive ideas about how to deal with emotional health. And again, he's very honest about his own challenges there. He says that if you want your health span to extend into your 80s and 90s and even beyond, you need to start training your body now for the centenarian decathlon. And I'm all in. I'm starting to think about, I'm going to the gym. I've got to do something different for sure. The book is disturbing, exciting, enlightening. It really is a good read. I recommend it highly. Some of you have already read it, so email me. Click on the link and let me know what you think. If you've read the book, if you haven't, certainly go out and get it. Dr. Peter Attia, Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity. This is Wayne Rivers at Performance Construction Advisors, where we build better contractors.